it's really, really unfortunate, especially when you see a story like this and you're seeing all the visuals of basically what pollution has done and how, despite how terrible the planet is at the moment, they're still trying to do things like the Dakota Access Pipeline that would just make it even worse without trying to fix the problems that are already here. It's very interesting. I loved the overall kind of motif that that saying of like humans have forgotten to listen to water. I think that is so beautiful because most of the world is actually made up of water, yet we don't pay attention to it. We don't seem to care about the quality of it, and then we complain when there's not enough of it, which is insane. We complain when there are not enough resources when we're the ones who took them in the first place but didn't replace it. Doesn't really make sense, does it? So I thought that was really, really good. I thought it was really great. I think it was a beautiful story of frustration but awareness. I think it was very beautiful to see how, unfortunately, it seems to have not spread enough. But in these small pockets of like indigenous people and people of color who it's affecting them the most, and trying to use their voice for something good with the platforms that they're able to get based on perseverance alone. Because of course, these governments don't want people to know all the shit that they're doing that's wrong. You know what I mean? But we have to be able to open our eyes. We have to be able to kind of see through the censorship and see through all the things that we're not being told, to see the things that we need to see, and kind of go out of our way to make sure that we're not ignorant on things that we should be knowledgeable of. So I think this was a beautiful story.
The way this film begins makes it very clear that there's a reverence for water. It's the way the narrator talks. You could read and hear and feel the reverence she has for water through the gorgeous cinematography. The fact that it's suddenly about at the 5-minute mark takes a complete turn to do an abrupt change about climate change was something that I didn't see coming. Thought we were going to go this beautiful water landscape, but it's a way that actually gets your attention by talking like we're going to talk about the reverence of water, to going completely about something like climate change and dealing with it and going into the importance, because the filmmaker behind this actually grabs your attention right away by making it sound like a narrative documentary where we're learning about water and the reverence that these people have for water, but then combining it abruptly with climate change at like the 5-minute mark. It worked really well because it shows the passion for water that the narrator has and that the indigenous tribes have. It's a gorgeous film. The cinematography was great. The score was great with the indigenous chanting and then the natural sounds of nature. It was completely gorgeous and in sync.
This was such a great visual documentary geared towards various formats. I noticed that there was a lot of use of social media formats, a lot of news outlets, video taken from various news outlets. And it really allowed for people to connect with the imagery. We also saw a lot of imagery of water in its natural state, water heavily polluted. And it showed the serious threats to water, and how standing in solidarity with the indigenous people to protect water can help preserve Earth and all living things. So the VO, in the experience of the subject who did the VO, it's clear that her indigenous background really creates this passion that she has within her, which I thought that, this is a perfect person to sort of narrate this whole piece, um, because she really ties it together with all these various clips. We see news clips, footage of protests, visuals of water. Um, and it's clear that this is a very passionate call to action.
Very, very profound and deep movie. I really enjoyed the overall premise. So, indigenous people, like this closer look at indigenous people, how they were exploited by extraction companies, and how these extraction companies not only affected indigenous people but also affected water, which is probably the most important thing we have on our planet. Without water, there is no life. And these indigenous people are reporting these companies that are really, really damaging water, and they also are sending a message that we should stick all together against these brutal companies and fight against them to save the water. I think the film was very well done, very profound, as I said, with an excellent direction cinematography.
I loved their kind of approach to it and their kind of like their explanation in the very beginning of what water is, what it means to them, why it's so important, all of the different aspects that water has been tainted or, you know, destroyed or is getting affected. And then going into even more depth and explaining the kind of whys apart from humans are doing this and going into like the details of some of the things that we don't necessarily hear about as much in the news. I feel like we hear about pollution and we hear about, you know, how important recycling is, and we hear about climate control and, you know, climate change and things like that. But I feel like with certain industries, they aren't as well publicized for their negative aspects. And I think that this film did a really good job of putting those kind of front and center and saying, like, this is what this industry also does. Yes, it fuels this, or yes, it does this, or yes, we use it in this way, but this is how they're getting that done. I think that this film did a really, really great job of explaining why water is so important to them, what is actually happening to the water, and then the stories and the reasons that we don't necessarily see, and the reasons why we don't necessarily see them, with the links to government, with the amount of money and power that these companies and corporations have, and things like that. So I think that it did a really, really good job of giving a full look into this kind of situation.
Thought it was a great pace, and I really enjoyed the content and what it was about. The beautiful shots of the land and the water were just gorgeous. I love how they said water represents, or the woman, the narrator, which I thought she did a really great job too. She said water represents home, family, culture, and community to me, and I thought that was really, really cool. Water is life, basically, foundation of all life on earth. I love that it talked about how medicines are grown near the water. And when I see how water is treated by humans, I worry for our collective futures. To me, it's like a domino effect, what they were discussing throughout the whole thing, how one bad thing done to the water has such a big impact on everything, all of the life inside the water. Is just killing the water is killing ourselves. It's disgusting that we're doing that to ourselves. And I do appreciate that this is brought up over and over again, and hopefully it brings more awareness. Really great script and narration.